Now, before anyone asks me, yes, I do plan on having all of these reviews uploaded by the end of October. In fact, by the time I've gotten to uploading this, I've already recorded the Castlevania 3 footage. For nearly 2 years now, I've been asked to do a month of Castlevania. It's actually pretty funny looking back. You see, I originally wanted to do this October of 2009, but to my surprise, the angry video game nerd beat me to it. And if you watch me, you most likely watch the nerd. So I didn't want to seem redundant. I didn't get to do it last year because I was then swamped with college work and working long hours at my job at the same time. So I settled with Saw the video game after someone requested that I review it along with Elliot. So now that I finally have the time, let's get started with the classic series. Uncle, this one's for you. Welcome to Month of Castlevania. Now, truth be told, I wasn't really into the Castlevania series till about 7 years ago. I was familiar with the series since the 90s, but I never really gave any of the games a shot, not counting trying Super Castlevania 4 on an emulator with a keyboard back in the beginning of high school. It wasn't until one night when my uncle introduced me to Castlevania Symphony of the Night. At first, I didn't think nothing of it. I thought the game looked pretty and the voice acting hilariously entertaining, but it didn't completely pique my interest then. And then my uncle let me borrow the game for a week. Holy shit, I can't believe I missed out on this for so long. A classic case of knowing the difference between seeing the game and actually playing it. Symphony of the Night intrigued me so much that I almost immediately went back to play the older titles, starting of course with the original. So we have the original Castlevania for the Nintendo Entertainment System, developed by Konami, who will later become famous for such series like Contra, Gradius, and Metal Gear. Castlevania was originally released for the Famicom Disk System in 1986, with the NES port following about a year later. The game stars Simon Belmont, a vampire hunter belonging to the clan of Belmonts who's dedicated to destroying the evil that is Count Dracula. We won't get into the origins of the Belmont family until very later in the series, so for the time being, let's just say Dracula borrowed the family's lawnmower and never returned it, so Simon is going on a rampage to teach him a lesson. Dracula's castle is filled with all sorts of bizarre architecture. At first, you're traveling into the main entrance of the castle, only for you to be suddenly 7 miles away from it in the next level. There's underground caverns, a dungeon of some sort, a clock tower, and finally the grand stairway to Dracula himself. I wonder just what the hell the blueprints looked like when this place was constructed, but if I had to guess, it would probably look something like this. As Simon, you need to guide him through the level, defeat the boss at the end, and collect this red orb. About as basic as you can get, but this was pretty much the norm when it was first released. Plastered in just about every wall in the game are candles that Simon can break to collect power-ups such as sub-weapons, or hearts which act as ammunition for your sub-weapons. No, the hearts aren't health. Instead, Simon can restore health by eating pot roast, which can usually be found inside breakable walls and whatnot. Yeah, we're all thinking, why would Simon even consider eating something that came out of a wall, but come on, just look at the thing. It looks fucking delicious. Anyway, Simon's main method of attack is his trusty whip/mace/flail the vampire killer. What an appropriately named weapon. But anyway, if you're wondering why I can't decide what weapon the vampire killer is, it's because with the proper power-up, Simon can upgrade his weapon from a leather whip to an extended flail, dealing massive damage. The sub-weapons that Simon can collect come in 5 varieties. There's the dagger, which really isn't all that fascinating honestly and not very fun to use. The axe, which can be useful at times but a little unwieldy other times. The holy cross, the boomerang. Yeah, that's what it was called back in the day. Can't have that pesky religion getting into our video games. Well, to their credit, it does behave like a boomerang and is actually pretty damn useful. But none of these weapons come close to the awesomeness that is the stopwatch and holy water. The firebomb. Sorry, religious censorship again. The stopwatch can stop enemies dead in their tracks, allowing you to kill them with ease, or just bypass them safely. It even works on some bosses, like the giant Medusa head. Poor bastard doesn't stand a chance. The only problem with the stopwatch is that it uses hearts like nothing else, about 5 per use. But it doesn't get any better than with a firebomb. Not only does it cost only 1 heart per use, but it can stop enemies dead in their tracks, letting you whip away like a madman. Combined with the power of a double or triple shot, which allows Simon to throw more than one sub-weapon at a time, just about everything in your path will meet certain death, including death himself. Die, motherfucker! Yeah! Okay, so you're thinking, well, it seems Simon can get pretty well equipped for his adventure. This game is probably a breeze. No. Let me put it bluntly. Castlevania is hard. Fucking hard. One of the most difficult games you'll play on the NES. Now you're probably thinking, well, what causes it to be hard? Is it the enemies, the level design, the controls? All of the above. Let's start with the small stuff. Castlevania is filled with all sorts of creatures. First, there's assholes like hunchbacks, or fleamen, as some of you would know them as. Not only are they fast, but their patterns are also completely random. I never know when they're gonna tackle me or just jump over me, so I almost always get hit by these fuckers. So close to the exit, oh god! Then there's Medusa heads. Like the slicers in Sonic the Hedgehog 2, this enemy is usually a pain in the ass because of their placement. If you can keep the pace up, they can actually be pretty easy to dodge, but most of the time that's just not the case. Shit! Oh, okay, well that actually... Oh, fuck. Oh, you motherfucker! Then there's enemies that just take fucking forever to kill, like these bone pillars. It takes about 5 hits with a fully powered whip, so when you run into a few in a row, you can guarantee your thumb is gonna hurt at the end of the level. They also shoot fireballs. Fuckers. Axe armors aren't much better, in fact, they're worse. They take about 9 hits to kill and throw axes at 2 different altitudes. It's like a damn mini-boss, to be honest. And you run into so many at the 5th stage. God. Really, a lot of enemies have the potential to make you pull your hair out. Skeletons that throw bones, birds that drop off hunchbacks, or black crows that just don't know when to get out of your fucking hair. Goddamn bats. Hard mode is jam-packed with these little bastards. The only enemies I never have a hard time with are the zombies in the first level of the game and the Black Panthers. Jump, and you'll never see it again. Now, when I say difficult level design, I'm really talking about those damn stairs. When climbing them, Simon moves like a freaking tank with no way to jump up or off the stairs. Because of this, alongside a restricted whip attack, defending yourself is next to impossible. Go ahead, try and get past the clock tower area without getting hit by those goddamn birds. You just can't. And sometimes, shit like this can happen. What the fuck? But the absolute worst thing, the main reason what makes Castlevania so difficult, is the control. It's incredibly stiff. Simon has only one type of speed, strutting, the Belmont strut, and he does it so well. Swinging the whip feels pretty good, but dear lord, does jumping suck. You can't change your direction in mid-air, so when you make a jump, your ass is going forward until you hit solid ground. If that wasn't enough, Simon also suffers from another problem that plagued many NES games back in the day. Knockback. My god, the knockback. Upon coming into contact with any hazard, Simon will jump back 5 feet. I'm guessing because it's the first time in his life he's ever felt pain and doesn't know how to properly react to it. Combined with tiny platforms and numerous bottomless pits, you're gonna die plenty of times because of knockback and poor jumping controls. Son of a bitch! The bosses are just the icing on the cake. They start off deceptively easy, making you think all the bosses are just as easy, but no. The shit hits the fan as soon as you run into Igor and Frankenstein's monster. Then there's the Grim Reaper himself, who I can admittedly never beat without the firebomb along with the triple shot. Trying to beat this asshole with just a whip is next to impossible. You can see that I'm reaping them with the firebomb, but if it isn't the boss themselves, it's the process of getting to these guys without losing your upgrades. It's agonizingly painful. The Grim Reaper stage pretty much requires that you get past the entire level without dying or without losing your sub-weapon. Yeah, that's another thing that bothers me. If you collect the sub-weapon while you already have one equipped, it gets replaced, with no way to get the previous weapon back. No amount of words can explain the frustration of losing your triple shot firebomb by collecting the fucking dagger weapon. But as I was saying earlier, having any sort of fair chance to the later bosses pretty much requires you to do a perfect run through the respective stage. Thankfully, though your lives are limited, you do have unlimited continues, so you can retry as many times as you like, assuming you have the patience. There's also times where you can get power-ups like the invincibility potion, which makes you invulnerable for a few seconds, and the crucifix, which wipes out all the enemies on the screen. When you see these items, make sure to pick them up. Bam! Awesome. And even though the process is difficult, there is no better feeling than defeating a boss that gave you such a hard time. But then, at the top of the grand stairway, we have Dracula himself, sporting a bright red cloak and a very large nose. Dracula loves to teleport and spam fireballs. In fact, that's all he does. But goddamn does he hurt, and you can only attack his head. Sometimes you think you have the pattern down, but there are times where he intentionally delays his attack, causing you to jump prematurely into his fireballs. But after dealing enough damage, you actually decapitate the bastard, causing him to transform into this thing. With the use of the firebomb, the fight isn't actually that hard, but again, his damage output can catch you off guard, and his size makes him nearly impossible to dodge when you're trapped in a corner. But with one final whip attack, Dracula explodes with a fiery explosion, and by collecting the final red orb, you've finished Castlevania. The castle crumbles and the credits roll, probably the most bizarre credit sequence you'll ever see. All the names are parodies of famous actors in the horror genre, though frankly, whenever I see the name Mixed Strex, I can't help but think of Count Orlok practicing the DJ business. Now, even though the game can be the pinnacle of difficult gameplay, I can still see why the original is considered a classic. I can't really explain it, but I find something very rewarding in defeating a stage or a boss that gave me such a hard time. The feeling of triumph you achieve when you collect that final red orb is intoxicating and makes you forget all the hardships you just dealt with. The music definitely helps too. This game's soundtrack is amazing, even to this day. It just fits so well with the gameplay and helps enrich the experience. Vampire Killer, Wicked Child, Heart of Fire, damn it, the entire soundtrack is awesome, and definitely one of the game's highest points. The game may be hard, but to me, that's what defines an old-school Castlevania. The control hasn't aged well, and the enemy selection could be less frustrating, but destroying bad guys with a whip and being able to use sub-weapons properly is extremely satisfying. And combined with the creepy atmosphere, fantastic music, and unlimited continues, Castlevania is an NES game that every gamer should at least try. It's certainly not for everybody, but it has a certain charm that I think most people can appreciate. With that said, I'll give the original title a 7.0 out of 10. A hardcore game for a hardcore gamer. Okay, so we're off to a frustrating, yet satisfying start. But does the difficulty only get harder from here, or does the game ease up as we go along? Well, next time we meet for Month of Castlevania, we're looking at Castlevania 2, Simon's Quest for the NES. Oh boy. Alright, we all know the game. As a person who was inspired by the likes of James Rolfe, it feels a bit odd having to review this game, but I can't get to the other Castlevania games until I get this review done and over with. So with that said, let's just begin. Is Castlevania 2 Simon's Quest better than its sequel in just about every single way? No, but let's take a deeper look. So I had my fun with the original Castlevania. Yeah, it made me want to pull my hair out, but not on the same level as games such as Super Ghouls and Ghosts and Contra 3. After beating the game, I immediately tried my hand at the second game. If you leave the title running, the game welcomes you to the Hell House, although by looking at the opening scene, I'm pretty sure I'm outside. Seriously, what's with this Hell House? Simon Belmont is once again the star of the game. After whipping the shit out of Dracula in the last game, the Count placed a curse on Simon upon death. So why is the third game subtitle called Dracula's Curse instead of being the subtitle for this game? In order to rid himself of the curse, Simon needs to collect pieces of Dracula that have been placed in 5 different mansions by God knows who. Upon starting the game, one of the biggest changes to the gameplay becomes immediately apparent. Instead of a strictly left-to-right linear progression, Castlevania 2 Simon's Quest introduces fans to an incredibly non-linear design that allows players to take Simon where they want him to go. There's no stages, no time limit, and no enemy health bar. It's all one giant world, and you're gonna need to explore it all in order to complete your adventure. Technically, Vampire Killer on the MSX did it first, but for most of us, it was the first time they did something like this. Like the first game, Simon still struts like nobody's business, has an uncontrollable jump, moves like a tank on stairs, and once again suffers from knockback issues. Ugh, that's gonna happen a lot, especially in this game. Simon still attacks enemies with his trusty whip, which can now be upgraded up to 4 times by purchasing different whips in towns that Simon can visit, assuming you have the hearts to buy them. Yeah, the hearts aren't just ammunition this time, they're now also money. What kind of fucked up country uses ammunition as currency, let alone hearts? So am I to believe that Kano is not only killing his victims, but also stealing their wallet? Well, moving on, sub-weapons also return, but instead of finding them through candles, you can either just buy them from a merchant or complete an incredibly obscure task and collect it as a reward. Want the silver dagger? Just drop some garlic in the graveyard, and this random man will appear out of thin air and give it to you. Simple, right? The only sub-weapons that don't make a return are the axe and stopwatch. The axe I can live without, but I sure would have liked the stopwatch. Well, at least Simon's Quest introduces us to the diamond sub-weapon, which... Yeah, I'm already missing the stopwatch. You can also buy some laurels, which grants you temporary invincibility. Ah, good old invincibility in a can. Dracula's pieces also count as equipment for Simon. For instance, equipping Dracula's rib lets Simon use a shield to deflect projectiles, and Dracula's heart allows you to reach the third mansion by showing it to the incredibly creepy ferryman. Oddly enough, the only sub-weapon that doesn't cost hearts to use is the holy water. I wonder why. The towns that Simon can explore are about as basic as you can get. You can either buy upgrades from crooked traders, go to a neon church and recover health for no charge, or waste time talking to one of the townspeople. The reason why I say you're wasting time is because for a majority of the game, the townspeople have nothing useful to say. The first guy you meet gives you a nice hint, but as far as memory goes, that's about it. Most of the time, people just tell you the vague whereabouts of clues to Dracula's riddle, and other times they just spur completely useless trivia. Well, hello there, crouching lady, you have any good deals? Well, geez, that's the last time I ever barged into someone's house. The nerve. When you aren't exploring a town, you're beating the hell out of enemies in all sorts of blocky regions, each sporting their own vibrant colors. Actually, the enemy selection is rather dull this time around. While I'm glad none of the enemies are as annoying as, say, the Hunchbacks or Axe Knights, not counting the fucking blobs, you're gonna get tired of seeing the same skeleton sprite over and over again with a different touch of color. Now, each region does come equipped with their own selection of bad guys, mummies, Medusa heads, xenomorphs, but most of the time it's skeletons. One of the main gimmicks of the game, the day and night system. You see, when you travel long enough, a text box will interrupt whatever you're doing and let you know the time of the day is about to change. During the day, you can visit towns and kill enemies with ease. During the night, the towns are closed and the enemies take more hits to kill, and Simon becomes a warhog. Never mind. I don't really mind the whole transition phase between night and day. Hey, anything that lets me take a sip of my drink while playing is okay with me. One of the things I hate the most is the actual process of waiting for the time of the day to change. Let me break it down. You see, like I mentioned earlier, you can only buy items with hearts during the day. You collect hearts by destroying enemies. During the night, enemies are harder to kill, but they drop more hearts to compensate. If you ever plan on getting somewhere in the game, you're gonna need a lot of hearts, because items, especially the whip upgrades, are expensive. The best way to get hearts without straying too far from a town is grinding the hell out of these zombies, and by God, you cannot get any more monotonous than this. It takes forever, and even when you get enough hearts, you still have to wait for daylight to arrive. Not a really big fan of Rolling Rock. Finally! And God forbid you die during the grind, because if you get a game over, you lose all of your hearts. You see, you have a total of 3 lives. I don't think there's a way to get more, but anyway. When you die, you begin immediately where you left off, even when you get a game over. So, what's the point of lives? It's like the only point of a game over is to take all of your hearts. Assholes. When you aren't grinding enemies for hearts, you're probably spending most of your time wondering just where the hell you need to go in order to continue the game. With information from townsfolk that ranges from cryptic to just all-around useless, Castlevania 2 is a game where you are pretty much required to read a guide in order to proceed. Whether it's the hints given to you through Nintendo Power or the technological cesspool that is the internet, reading a guide is the only way you'll find out that you need to equip the red crystal, crouch at this dead end, and wait for a whirlwind to warp you to the other side. Or equipping the blue crystal, crouching to this body of water, only to find out there's not really a body of water. Wait, what the hell am I looking at? I can't imagine how first timers were supposed to figure this shit out. It's worse than the original Metroid. Not as bad as Shadowgate though. Ugh, that game makes me cringe. In order to collect a piece of Dracula, you need to travel inside one of the 5 mansions and make your way through more skeletons, spear guards, the occasional gargoyle, and these incredibly annoying blobs. By God, I didn't think it could get any worse than Hunchbacks, but combined with the problem I had with stairs in an old-school Castlevania game, it's just simply impossible to avoid getting hit. Each mansion is packed to the brim with obstacles, including invisible walls, breakable blocks, and most annoyingly, invisible pitfalls. Seriously, it's bad enough the game forces you many times to make an extremely picky jump, but just to fuck with you thinking you can stand on something that's not really there is just fucking mean. This is why I think the Holy Water doesn't cost any hearts to use. The developers knew you were going to spam the hell out of it just to see where an invisible pitfall is located. Along your journey inside a mansion, you'll come across a cloaked man that can sell you an oak stake. At first, you probably think it's a one-use sub-weapon that does jack all, but in actuality, it's an item you need to use in front of this orb you come across at the end of each mansion. By doing so, you can possess a piece of Dracula. It's never explained why exactly you need an oak stake. I mean, can I just whip the fucking thing and possess a piece that way? Well, at least the music is pretty damn good. Castlevania 2 introduces us to Bloody Tears, which has become a staple in the series, but other tracks such as the mansion theme and the town theme are pretty good too. Only problem is, the entire soundtrack is incredibly limited. It's only about 6 songs, not including the game over theme and password music. Because of that, you will get sick of the music. It's only a matter of time. Okay, where's the fucking boss fights? I've done about 3 mansions up to this point and not one boss fight. Oh god, the Grim Reaper! Eat Devo, motherfucker! Wow, that was pathetic. Such a downgrade from the last game. Okay, so I got the next piece of Dracula in my possession. Let's move on. Whoa, he respawns? What the hell? Wait, I could just strut past him? Both ways? Let me see. Oh my god, I could have just skipped him? Granted, he wasn't a challenge to begin with, but... wow. Oh, well, Carmilla certainly looks more challenging. That's all she does, isn't it? Dear lord, why the sudden castration in the boss department? More importantly, why do only the last two mansions have boss fights to begin with? They were the most memorable part of the last game, for better or worse, but still. Well, after you collect the fifth and final piece of Dracula, it's time to head back to Castlevania, which thanks to your intrusion from the last game is dark, desolate, and have absolutely no obstacles. Kinda boring to be honest, but at the same time it also invokes a sense of paranoia. Finally, after reaching the last room, the pieces of Dracula form a mind of their own and recombine to form Dracula himself. And he's disgustingly easy. Yeah, he's big, and when he manages to hurt you, it really hurts, but let's see. The moment Dracula appears, you can score about 10 hits before he even begins to move. After that, you just gotta whip him about 3 more times, and bam, he's toast. You can also use the nerve strategy and just spam the hell out of Mystic Fires, or, my personal favorite, use a Laurel, stand in the center, and spam the hell out of the attack button. Whoopa! At last, we've completed Simon's quest.
Although the confrontation between Simon and Dracula has concluded, Simon couldn't survive his fatal wounds.
Wait, what? Simon dies anyway? Actually, depending on how fast you complete the game, you can get one of 3 endings, with this one considered to be the normal ending. Damn, I couldn't imagine what the bad ending would look like.
The battle has consummated. Now peace and serenity have been restored to Transylvania, and the people are free of Dracula's curse forever. And you, Simon Belmont, will always be remembered for your bravery and courage.
Well wait, the bad ending is better than a normal ending. What the shit? The best ending requires you to beat the game in less than 8 game days, but honestly, you're better off just using the game's password feature to get it. By the way, the Famicom version of Simon's Quest is a save feature, yet the NES version does not. May I ask, why? Zelda had a save feature, Final Fantasy had a save feature, I think it would have definitely helped. Out of all the classic Castlevanias, this is certainly my least favorite. The non-linear style, while an interesting choice, is executed rather poorly here, and because of that, you'll spend most of your time lost with no idea how to proceed. I blame the poorly written dialogue, but it's not just the non-linear style that's the problem. The process of getting hearts and buying upgrades can be incredibly tiresome. After a while, you begin to grow sick of fighting the same kinds of enemies over and over again. The controls, once again, are still an issue. Not so much as last time because of the open-ended level design of this game, but it's incredibly apparent when there's water pits involved. Seriously, the jumps they expect you to do are ridiculous. The music's good, but even that can't save the game from all the other problems it suffers from. It's not terrible, it's just an experiment gone awry. Even with a password system, Simon's Quest is a game that requires too much energy and patience to enjoy in one sitting. With that said, I'll give the game a 5.5 out of 10. Only hardcore fans of the Castlevania series will find any sort of enjoyment from it. Personally, there are much better Castlevania games out there. Okay, I can easily say the worst is over, and I apologize to all those that really do like Castlevania 2 Simon's Quest, but to me it's too much of a chore to play. Luckily, I think it only gets better from here, so next time we meet for Monthly Castlevania, we're looking at Castlevania 3 Dracula's Curse for the NES. Okay, firstly, I want to apologize for delaying this review a bit. I've been busy getting a few personal issues out of the way and having my fun with Batman Arkham City, which is turning out to be a fantastic game, by the way, but that's for another time. With that said, we've reached the end of the NES trilogy of Castlevania games, so without further ado, here's my review of Castlevania 3 Dracula's Curse. So from what I can guess, not a lot of people back in the day appreciated the change in gameplay Simon's Quest introduced us to. But the last Castlevania on the NES, Konami went back to the original formula that made the first game a success and expand upon it. The end result is Castlevania 3 Dracula's Curse, a prequel to the first game that stars Trevor Belmont, an ancestor to Simon Belmont. In Japan, he's known as Ralph. I never understood why they changed his name overseas. I mean, was Ralph not considered manly during localization or something? I don't know. The plot's simple. Kill Dracula. Well, the opening text elaborates a little further with the plot, but it sounds like it was written by a 6-year-old.
During 15th century Europe, there lived a person named Dracula. He practiced sorcery in order to create a bad world filled with evil. He began taking over the continent of Europe, changing countries from good to bad. The good people of Europe tried to fight off Dracula, but no one was able to survive. Finally, the Belmont family was summoned to battle Dracula's vile forces. The Belmont family has a long history of fighting evil. The townspeople became afraid of the Belmont's superhuman power and asked them to leave the country. Fortunately, the people found a mighty Belmont called Trevor. Wait, they banished the Belmonts because of their power, yet relied on the Belmonts to deal with their problem? Who translated this?
Castlevania 3 is pretty much the first game on steroids. More stages, more enemies, and more frustration. Trevor controls exactly like Simon, so apparently the stiff controls are hereditary. The whip can once again be upgraded by collecting the proper power-ups from candles and whatnot, and all the sub-weapons and power-ups from the first game are back in full force. Ah, good old pot roast in a wall. It's good to know that every incarnation of Castlevania comes equipped with their own pot roast. Dracula can be quite random. Once again, you complete a stage by defeating a boss and collecting the red orb that drops from the sky, but besides upping the ante on familiar elements, Castlevania 3 introduces us to a few new things. Upon completing certain levels, you're given a choice. Do you take the upper path towards the clock tower, or the lower path through the forest?
The choices are yours, and yours alone.
With different paths come different stages and different encounters. The main gimmick of Castlevania 3 is the partner system. By defeating certain bosses, Trevor can save one of 3 people who have a bone to pick with Dracula. With a partner by your side, you can switch characters with a simple push of the select button. First, we have Grant Dynasty? How do you pronounce that last name? Well, it doesn't really matter, because Grant is awesome. Besides being fast and having the ability to crawl on walls and ceilings like a spider, he can also, get this, control his jumps in mid-air! So wait, if the developers are certainly capable of giving a character fluid control, then why the hell aren't they giving the Belmonts the proper treatment? The only problem I have with Grant is his attack range. It's pathetically short.
In the Japanese version, Gren's default weapon is the throwing dagger, which is much more useful, but just as weak. Next up, we have Sypha Bilnades. Again, I'm not exactly sure how to pronounce that last name, so forgive me if I botched it. Sypha, like Gren, has miserably short range with physical attacks, but she more than makes up for it with her magical attacks. Oh yeah, spoiler alert, Sypha is a woman. Anyway, Sypha comes equipped with her own sub-weapons, a fireball that has good range, an incredibly useful ice attack, and my personal favorite, electrical orbs that absolutely destroys bosses. When I'm bringing along Sypha, I always make sure I stock up on hearts to make my encounters with bosses all the easier. Finally, we have Alucard. Yes, that Alucard, making his first appearance in this title. Actually, Alucard is my least favorite character in this game. His main weapon is his quote-unquote balls of destruction that can be upgraded to shoot 3 at once, but the overall strength of the attack leaves a lot to be desired. Well, it makes short work of Death's second form, so I guess that helps. Alucard can also transform into a bat that consumes 1 heart per second. Personally, I think it's a neat ability, and comes in handy when you just want to bypass a frustrating section. But overall, Alucard won't get his badass upgrade until Symphony of the Night, so until then, blah. The partner system adds a ton of replayability to the game. The only problem is, you can only take one partner at a time. If you run into another character while already traveling with someone else, you're going to have to drop your current partner if you want to take the new one along with you. If you're feeling confident you can beat the game with just Trevor, it's certainly possible, but I always bring a buddy along. Unfortunately, like I mentioned earlier, since Castlevania 3 enhances the formula of the original game, that also means the difficulty has been ramped up to a ridiculous degree. This game is hard! Combined with the control issues from earlier and level designs that are just fucking infuriating, Castlevania 3 is a game that not only requires patience, but sheer willpower to avoid throwing your controller straight through your TV. Seriously, some of these levels are just fucking impossible, and if it isn't frustrating gimmicks like awkwardly placed enemies, it's the goddamn stairs! Yes, I know I'm beating a dead horse by mentioning how much I absolutely loathe stairs in the old school games, but it's this game where they're the most frustrating. Some levels are filled to the brink with stairs, and combined with enemies that just piss you off, it's aggravating. Incredibly aggravating. What the? That enemy just took 1/3 of my health with 1 hit! 1 hit! Why do enemies do more damage in later stages? What's the logic in that? I died about 90 times while recording footage for this review. Yeah, I used the famous help me code which gives me 10 lives instead of 3, but honestly, you need this code! Like the first game, you have unlimited continues, but if you get a game over, you're bumped back to the beginning of the level you died in. The stages are quite stingy with checkpoints, and when you lose a life, you're usually sent about 3 rooms back, which eventually causes your frustration levels to explode. This is especially apparent in the final stage. If you die during the fight with Dracula, you're bumped a few rooms back instead of restarting at the bottom of the grand staircase, like the first game. And if you get a game over, you have to do the entire stage all over again. Jesus Christ! Once again, the boss fights are the highlight, more than the first and second game combined, actually. Most of them are quite easy to beat when you get a strategy down, but there are some where you just have to abuse the enemy programming, like the fight with the doppelganger. Oh, you son of a bitch! Dracula himself is certainly more involved this time around. Again, like the first game, he loves to teleport spam, but he's much easier to hit this time around. His second form this time around is a group of heads? What the hell is this supposed to be? It looks like a demonic execute. Oh, look at that, a Pokemon reference in a Castlevania game. The second form is incredibly easy though, in a short time you'll beat the thing no problem. Well, that wasn't— whoa, what the hell? Oh, well, turns out Dracula has a third form this time around, this giant man-bird that shoots lasers. Okay, I'm convinced the developers were running out of time and decided to let the child who wrote the opening design the final boss, so yeah, giant man-bird. Not really that hard, but the lasers can catch you off guard with their sheer size. With proper timing and skill, third and final form of Dracula anticlimactically fades to black, therefore ending Castlevania 3. Your ending depends on which character you brought along, but regardless of such, you're always standing on a cliffside watching the castle crumble. Now you may be thinking, what's the significance of reviewing the Japanese version? Well, plenty. Unfortunately, I have no way of legitimately recording footage of it since I don't have a Famicom or a converter. I've heard from plenty of you guys that Gyromite has a converter so I can use to play Japanese games, but as of this review, I still don't have one. So we're gonna cheat a bit here and use an emulator. I have the original game, so I don't feel particularly guilty in this case. The Japanese version of Castlevania 3 has a lot of little differences from the NES counterpart that I think make it an overall better experience. First off, the difficulty is slightly more balanced. The amount of damage an enemy does depends on the enemy itself, instead of how far you are along the game. The help me code doesn't work, but in this version I really don't mind. The Dracula battle is also a bit different. Dracula's first form seems to move a lot faster than the NES version, but just as easy. The lasers his third form shoots are also smaller and as a result easier to dodge, and unlike the NES version, when you die fighting Dracula, you restart at the bottom of the grand staircase, just like the original game. You still have to redo the entire stage if you get a game over though, so blah. But the biggest difference, and the main reason why I think the Famicom version completely trumps the NES version is because, say it with me, the music. My god, Castlevania 3's soundtrack as a whole is freaking incredible, but on the Famicom it sounds even better. Apparently the Famicom version has some extra sound channels that allow the developers to enhance the music, and goddamn it definitely shows. I can't really describe it, but if you want to hear for yourself, check out Xplods2A03's channel. He has the complete Castlevania 3 soundtrack, both NES and Famicom. Listen for yourself and decide which version you think is better. Castlevania 3 Dracula's Curse is a prime example of a sequel done right. Well, in most areas, but you get where I'm going at. The levels are bigger, the replayability is high thanks to the partner system and multiple pathways, and overall, it's quite a hefty adventure for a game on the NES. As you could have guessed, my biggest gripe is with the difficulty, and like my opinion on Mario 2 The Lost Levels, it's a factor that I think ultimately weakens the experience. This was a sequel made for fans of the original, but in the end, I think only fans of the original will actually enjoy it. Newcomers may be turned off by the challenge, but if you can persevere through it all, you might find some satisfaction. Personally, I think you're better off playing the Japanese version to start off. Anything to lessen the difficulty without resorting to a Game Genie is A-OK by me. With that said, I'll give Castlevania 3 Dracula's Curse on the NES a 6.5 out of 10, and I'll give the Famicom version a 7.5 out of 10. The last 8-bit Castlevania certainly goes out with a bang, but technology marches forward, and the next time we meet, we're going to the Super Nintendo. Next up on Month of Castlevania is Super Castlevania 4. Overall, I had my share of fun, triumph, and nerd-like tangents with the NES trilogy of Castlevania games. Together, they represent what made the Nintendo Entertainment System so great back in the day. It wasn't just about beating the game, but gaining the skills and reflexes to master the controls you were forced to deal with. Yeah, I may not like particular elements of certain games, but in the end, these games are still considered classics and loved by many. But now it's time to jump up a generation. In 1991, fans of the series were introduced to Super Castlevania 4, considered by many to be one of the greatest entries in the series and the best old-school Castlevania game ever made.
So yeah, those are pretty big claims. But hey, the Super Nintendo can do that to a series. Super Mario World is often considered to be the best 2D Mario game of all time, and Super Metroid, well, you guys all know. But let's just dive right in.
Super Castlevania 4, in actuality, is a remake of the original Castlevania. Although the opening text says you're once again controlling Simon, that will mean Simon's well over 100 years old since Dracula rises once every century. As Simon, it's up to you to put an end to Dracula's madness once again, only this time, you're on the Super Nintendo. Once again, you're killing enemies with your trusty whip, the Vampire Killer, but this time, Simon can whip in 8 directions, and it feels good. Oh yeah, this is awesome. Killing airborne enemies has never been this easy, and it feels absolutely great destroying enemies that gave me such a hard time in earlier titles, like Axe Knights. Sweet. You can also hold the attack button down and dangle the whip in any direction you want. It looks a bit goofy, but it's great for blocking projectiles and killing annoying enemies like birds. And I love using it against the mummy. Taste my limp whip, vile fiend! Sub-weapons, again, are back in full force, but now you can just press the R button to use them instead of having to hold up and press the attack button. Candles, hearts, and pot roast are given 16-bit updates as well, so just about everything is here and accounted for. The 16-bit upgrade has more to offer for Simon besides a more versatile whip. The control has been tremendously improved. You can actually influence Simon's direction in mid-air now! It still feels just a little stiff, but it's a great improvement nonetheless. Look at this, you can actually jump on stairs now! Oh, this is great. You can even fall through stairs with just the push of a button. Yeah, you still can't jump while you're actually on the stairs, but since you can whip in all 8 directions, the stairs are thankfully no longer a problem in level design. Ah, son of a bitch! Knockback is still present though, and just like before, it can lead to some bullshit like this. Simon can now also cling to these hooks that are found in certain levels, allowing him to swing left and right to reach higher areas. It's pretty fun to do, but it becomes a pain in the ass in later levels. Wanna guess why? Unfortunately, Super Castlevania 4 gets rid of the whole partner system of Castlevania 3, and the multiple pathways are gone as well. You're controlling Simon Belmont from beginning to end, but with improved control like this, I don't really mind at all. The levels themselves contain a bunch of themes. For the first half of the game, you're actually trying to get to the castle itself. There's aquatic ruins, a murky cave system, a swamp that for some reason reminds me of Actraiser, and finally the entrance to the castle itself. Once you're finally inside the castle, things start to get a little familiar, although there are still plenty of new elements like swinging chandeliers, a level made of nothing but treasure, and of course a clock tower. There's always a damn clock tower. Each level is filled to the brim with all kinds of platforming challenges, but thanks to the improved control, it's much easier to time your jumps and whatnot, but there are still sections that I never look forward to. Like this part, where you have to make it through disappearing platforms, and this vertical climbing area, where the stairs fall apart upon contact, and you constantly have this ring of instant death on your ass. For some reason, this particular staircase always gives me a hard time. I'm holding up on the D-pad to land on the stairs, but I keep fucking missing them. God damn it. I died here about 12 times. The game is nowhere near as difficult as Castlevania 1, and especially not Castlevania 3, but every once in a while, the game loves to remind you that you're playing an old-school Castlevania game. The enemies are all creatures we're well familiar with at this point, and for the most part, they behave exactly how they did in the older games. Some newcomers can be a bit annoying, like these floating eyes in the cellar, and these ghosts who I can never seem to properly aim at. Hell, even the fucking tables attack Simon. Furniture is enemies. Also, what's the deal with this centipede creature? It only appears in this specific room in this specific level, and as soon as you off-screen the thing, it disappears, never to be seen or heard from again. How odd. But with familiar enemies come familiar bosses, and there's a lot of them. Some stages have more than one boss, and sometimes you even fight them in the middle of the stage instead of just at the very end. Only problem is, a lot of them are incredibly easy. I mean, look how fast I kill Medusa here. Though a lot of them look intimidating, they sure as hell don't put up much of a fight. One of my least favorite bosses in the game is this rock monster, not because of his attacks or anything, it's just because every time you strike him, the screen flashes white, and it's incredibly irritating, especially when you're playing on a big TV. Ow, ow, ow. 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 But the boss I hate the most, and the one I never look forward to, is Slogra. Fucking Slogra. Before your encounter with Dracula, you have to fight Slogra, Gaibin, and Death himself with only maybe 1 or 2 drumsticks in between each fight. I can take Gaibin down, no problem, but Jesus Christ, this fucking Birdman always gives me the red ass. It's bad enough he has an explosively allergic reaction to Simon's web, but I swear his collision detection is all over the place. Look, I was nowhere near him. What the hell hit me? Come on, I'm so good. God, I hate when that happens. Luckily, you have unlimited continues like the previous game, and even if you get a game over, you restart at the beginning of the boss rush, so at least they wised up with the checkpoints. The crouching strategy is the best way to deal with him, but god damn does my thumb hurt after the battle. Luckily, Death himself is a total cakewalk, especially if you just stick to the corner and whip him when he's above you. But when all said and done, it's time to face off with Dracula once again, and this is certainly one of the most epic encounters in the series. I mean, not only does the background music set off the mood perfectly, but when Dracula's close to death, Simon's theme kicks in, and it's just an awesome way to conclude the battle. The fight as a whole is one of the easier Dracula encounters, and hell, one of his attacks can actually drop some food if you manage to attack it. And before anyone else points it out, yes, I did use the hidden power-ups located in the invisible staircase. I love hidden shit like this. With one final hit, Dracula is once again defeated, and just like the original, Simon watches on as Castlevania crumbles into nothingness, ending Super Castlevania 4. Does anyone else think that body armor is a little too low for comfort? I mean, God forbid there's a sudden draft. Without a doubt in my mind, this is one of the best old-school Castlevania games ever made, but do I think it's the greatest? No. Personally, I think Castlevania Rondo of Blood is the best in the old-school Castlevania games, but damn does this game come close. The graphics are great for Super Nintendo standards, the control and attack options are some of the best in the series, and the amount of challenge is just right. Not too hard, but not too easy. If there's one thing I can absolutely praise Super Castlevania 4 on, it's the atmosphere. And again, you have the music to thank for that. The entire soundtrack has a dark and creepy vibe that really brings out the levels and makes you feel like you're on a journey of life or death. The battle music with Dracula is one of my favorite musical pieces of all time, and the ending theme is something I'll never tire of. With controls that any gamer will appreciate, an incredibly versatile whip, and an atmosphere that completely draws you in, Super Castlevania 4 is one of the best old-school Castlevania games out there, and something I recommend you give a shot. Yeah, it's still a little challenging, and it has its moments of pure frustration, but the gameplay more than makes up for it. I'll give Super Castlevania 4 an 8.5 out of 10. For a game over 20 years old, this one has certainly aged well.
Only one game left to go, guys, and next time we meet, we're moving on to the Sega Genesis. We're ending Month of Castlevania with the bloodiest entry in the series yet. Castlevania Bloodlines for the Sega Genesis. Well guys, this is it, the end of Month of Castlevania. Now for quite a while, the series was only something you can find on Nintendo consoles, but back in 1994, the Sega Genesis finally got its piece of the frustration. So does this month end on a high note? Let's find out. This is my review of Castlevania Bloodlines.
To many gamers, it simply could not get any better than Super Castlevania 4 in terms of both gameplay and control. While I certainly agree that the control made the game pretty good, I honestly think it took a step back from Castlevania 3 with the lack of multiple paths and extra characters. Again, I didn't really mind, but I can't help but notice when I look back at the game. 3 years after the release of Super Castlevania 4, gamers were introduced to Castlevania Bloodlines, and, well, I can definitely see blood, so the title makes sense. I guess. Well, in terms of the story, this chick named Elizabeth Bartley wishes to resurrect her uncle, Count Dracula, which she can bring terror all across Europe. Our heroes this time are 2 characters, John Morris and Eric Lecard. If you're wondering just where the hell the Belmonts are, well, we're not going to find out until Castlevania Portrait of Ruin for the Nintendo DS, so until then, let's just say Dracula finally returned the borrowed lawnmower with the Belmonts giving no hard feelings afterwards. As the two, you have to travel all across Europe and put an end to Elizabeth's plan to revive the Dark Prince himself. You choose which character you want to play as before the adventure starts, with no way to switch between the 2 characters during the adventure. I think it would have been cool if we can switch like you can do in Castlevania 3, but maybe that'll make the game too easy. I'm not exactly sure. John Morris may not exactly be a Belmont, but he still wields the Vampire Killer and has the Belmont Strut. With enough upgrades, John can actually turn the Vampire Killer into this whip of lightning? What the hell is this? If you enter a specific code in the options menu, you can listen to a classic Castlevania tune when you're fully upgraded. Oh, damn it. Yeah, if you get hit just once, you lose the 4th upgrade. What is this, the Castlevania Adventure? No way, I didn't review that game yet. John and Eric can also use sub-weapons just like a Belmont, and hell, they can even use enhanced versions of sub-weapons at the cost of more gems, which are this game's equivalent to hearts. I never really used the enhanced attacks, but it's a neat concept altogether. Unfortunately, if there's one thing John and Eric didn't learn from the Belmonts, particularly Simon from Super Castlevania 4, it was control. We're back to the original controls in this game, folks, so that means a stiff jump, no mid-air controls, and knockback. God. Luckily, we can still jump on stairs, and surprisingly enough, we can actually jump while we're on stairs this time, so at least we have that. John also can't whip in all 8 directions. Well, kinda. He can't whip straight up, but he can whip in an upwards diagonal direction and straight down while jumping. He can even cling on to ceilings and swing across large pits and hazards. I just find it odd how they added new features and took away others. I don't think anybody complained about the improved control in Super Castlevania 4, so why revert back to the old style? Eric Lecard doesn't have a whip, instead he uses a spear. The Alucard spear. Yep, straight from the pretty boy himself. Unlike John, Eric can actually thrust his spear upwards, making some bosses a total joke, but he can't swing on ceilings or attack diagonally while jumping. Taking a note from Super Mario Bros. 2 USA, Eric can do a super jump by holding down on the D-pad long enough. Because of this, Eric can take alternate paths that John himself can't get to. Whoa! Super jump indeed. I can't exactly tell, but I think Eric has just a bit more range with a fully upgraded spear, and he also has the spinning attack, which I find cool but not really useful. In the end, I'm more comfortable with controlling John Morris than I am Eric, but that's probably because I've gotten so used to the whip at this point. Anyway, about the adventure. Instead of just traveling through Transylvania, John and Eric have to travel all across Europe and stop whatever forces of darkness impede their path. It starts off familiar with you traveling through the destroyed remains of Castlevania, but then you're suddenly off to a shrine of Atlantis in Greece, then there's the Tower of Pisa in Italy, the Munitions Factory in Germany, a palace in France, and finally a castle in England. Damn, these guys really get around, and in such a short amount of time, I wonder just what the hell their method of travel is.
Oh, no, I was just asking.
Altogether, there's only 6 levels like the original Castlevania, but they're all pretty long and come equipped with their own challenges and enemies. Die, zombie!
Holy shit.
Yep, if there's one thing Castlevania Bloodlines was not afraid to dwell on, it was the gore factor. Zombie guts splatter on the floor, harpies lose their heads upon death, and we have this rotting hellhound.
God damn, that's gruesome. What was this game rated? GA? General Audience? Damn. We were pretty hardcore in the 90s.
Yeah, so the game is pretty graphic. I'm guessing Sega wasn't so strict with the no blood policy, kind of like how they kept the graphic violence intact with their port of Mortal Kombat. That's the second time I brought up Mortal Kombat in these reviews. The game's violence ended up being censored back in Europe. Ironic, I know. There, the game is known as Castlevania The New Generation. It contains a few graphical alterations that make it a bit more child-friendly. I don't know what those alterations are exactly since I never played it, but I'm sure a quick Google search will hold all the answers. The game as a whole is actually very pretty to look at, and it's filled with all sorts of little details, both neat and nonsensical. I always like this wobbling tower section, and this platforming section always makes me tense. What's the point of this dinosaur skeleton? Where did it come from, and just what the hell was this thing? What a stellar looking statue. Fuck you, Michelangelo, I'm John Morris. My least favorite level is at the very end. Well, figures the last level would be the hardest, but for some unexplained reason, your vision is distorted. You can make it through just fine as long as you pay attention to your feet, but thanks to those damn Medusa heads, I always end up dying at least once. Moving on, oh shit, anti-gravity platforming in my Castlevania? Ugh, I hate shit like this. I hate it in Sonic, and I especially hate it here. Once again, if there's something that eases my frustration in a Castlevania game, though, it's the music. It's definitely more upbeat and energetic than Super Castlevania 4, but to me, I think energetic music works best for Castlevania. I mean, I love Super Castlevania 4's atmospheric pieces, but this is music I could jam to all day. The Genesis style makes it feel a little aged, though, and there are sometimes I can't help but feel the music and sound effects are belting or just busting out a wet fart. Sorry. The boss fights are pretty awesome altogether. We have some familiar faces like Frankenstein's monster and the giant bat, the gargoyle. But this game gives us the giant armor knights, a monster made of nothing but gears, and Mothra. Okay, it's not really Mothra, but you can't help but make the comparison. Death is here once again, but he's no problem. Even easier than a Super Castlevania 4 incarnation. Elizabeth Bartley isn't much of a challenge either. Her Medusa form has an incredibly predictable attack pattern, and the final half of the fight is just you striking her when she teleports across the screen. Yeah, I know she's pretty hard to see, but that's video compression for you. I need to find a way to fix that. Now, even though we stopped Elizabeth, Dracula manages to return anyway, and like Castlevania 3, he also has 3 forms. Luckily, the entire battle really isn't that hard, but the forms are just weird as fuck. His second form is this wizard thing, and his last form is this demon with a mouth for a crotch. Yeah, you might want to get that looked at. With one final strike, Dracula distorts into nothingness, and by once again collecting the final red orb, Castlevania Bloodlines is finally concluded. The resurrection of Dracula has been averted. Oh wait, that's it? Huh, I thought it'd be more than that. Well, that was an easy paycheck.
What kind of ending was that?
Oh, come on, you have to complete expert mode just to see the real ending? I hate when games do that. I wonder what the easy ending looks like. Damn, we don't even see the castle crumble completely? What assholes. I would show you the ending for beating the game on expert, but the game is already hard enough as it is. Not as hard as Castlevania 3, but in this game you actually have a limited amount of continues. Use them all up and it's back to the beginning of the game for you. There is a password feature, but I always find it a pain in the ass to input. You know, I kinda like the limited continues, guys. Now, even though it doesn't have the control that made Super Castlevania 4 so great, it's still a fun game that has its own merits. The levels are a sight to see, the graphics are colorful, and the soundtrack is catchy as hell. Again, the game still has the classic Castlevania challenge, and honestly, with limited continues, it might turn some of you off. In the end, I still consider Super Castlevania 4 the better game, but I assure you it's only because of its superior control. Personally, I think this game beats Super Castlevania 4 in terms of aesthetics and music, but in this case, it's the control that's the main factor. I'll give Castlevania Bloodlines for the Sega Genesis a 7.5 out of 10. This is a game that should be in any Castlevania fan's collection. Unfortunately, you're gonna have to go out of your way to get a Genesis for it, because as far as I'm aware, this game has never been re-released on any other console. Speaking of which, where's my Castlevania Mega Collection?
And that, my friends, is the end of Month of Castlevania. Now, I know there's plenty of other series that we didn't go through yet, like the Portable Games and Rondo of Blood and, of course, Symphony of the Night, but there's always another time to go through those. Personally, I'm not gonna lie, I'm more of a fan of the Metroidvania-style type Castlevania games, but I'll save my opinions for another time. Uncle, if you're watching this, thank you. You've introduced me to so many games throughout my childhood, and, you know, this month was for you, dude, and I hope you liked it. In fact, I hope all of you enjoyed it. You know, this was one month that I had a lot of fun making, even though it caused me to pull my hair out in a lot of cases. No, I'm already losing hair as it is. So. But with that said, I'm Johnny, and wait, tomorrow is November 1st. You know what that means? Uncharted 3's coming up tomorrow.